Today, on the 2nd of January 2025, there are a lot of interesting updates from the Pokrovsk direction. Donetsk Oblast. Ukrainian drones expose mass casualties as wave after wave of Russian assaults is crushed by artillery and reconnaissance-guided strikes. Here, the Russian assault near Pokrovsk descends into chaos as poorly executed operations, inhumane treatment, and the sending of wounded soldiers on assaults led to devastating losses and ever-decreasing Russian morale. With Russian commanders resorting to handcuffing their soldiers together to prevent desertions, underlying issues remain unsolved, and Russian soldiers become increasingly unwilling to throw away their lives. However, the goal of the Russian forces in this area remains the same: to establish positions on the outskirts of Pokrovsk and the agglomerated settlements. The Russian offensive operation on the city's western flank near Kotlin and Udakny is stalling, with Ukrainians launching counterattacks to limit Russian progress. By assaulting Pokrovsk directly, Russians hope to establish a foothold that would nullify their logistical issues, caused by a lack of infrastructure to accumulate supplies. To achieve this, the Russian forces are utilizing their positions in the village of Pishana, launching assaults through the forests and tree lines that connect it to the agglomerated settlements on the outskirts of Pokrovsk. The buildings and a nearby mine in Pishanya allowed the Russians to accumulate a large enough force to launch pure infantry assaults through the narrow tree lines and forest patches to reach and initiate fighting for Dnipro. Through these tactics, Russians are trying to utilize the main advantage of their close proximity to Ukrainian positions in Dnipro. Russians are trying to use the tree lines and small forests in the area to conceal their troop movements along this already short distance, allowing Russian forces to quickly reach Ukrainian positions while minimizing losses along the way. However, Russian assaults are limited by a lake and a small river in the north, forcing them into a narrow funnel south of Dnipro, which Ukrainians have further reinforced with razor wire and landmines. This forces the Russian forces into casualty-intensive assaults, as Ukrainians understood that Russians could only move through this narrow area. They unleashed a swarm of reconnaissance drones equipped with thermal and night vision cameras to monitor the tree lines and strike any Russian forces attempting to attack. Combat footage from the area reveals how Ukrainians detected the movement of Russian forces with thermal cameras almost immediately after they left their cover. Overall, this allowed the Ukrainians to accurately strike the Russian assault with conventional artillery and cluster rounds, inflicting tremendous losses and leaving no survivors. In total, Russian commanders launched 4 waves of assaults along this tree line over the following 40 minutes, with complete disregard for the fact that Ukrainians kept destroying each wave they sent, forcing the Russian soldiers to climb over the deceased bodies of the previous waves. Additional footage from the aftermath of the attack shows one of the surviving Russian soldiers isolated in a dugout, filming himself and stating that his commander refused to evacuate him and the other wounded, leading to him being the only one left alive. Ukrainians quickly detected this soldier, providing him with food and water and guiding him back to Ukrainian lines so he could surrender himself. Russians also shared another video showing more wounded soldiers being prepared to go on assault while walking on crutches. As instances of extreme neglect by Russian commanders grow, the morale of Russian soldiers is reaching new lows, creating extreme dissatisfaction and risking massive desertions. Later footage, shared by Russian soldiers in the Pokrovsk direction, shows how the commanders solved this issue by tying their soldiers together with handcuffs as they were transported to the front. They feared these men would desert while on their way to the front. Besides the cruelty of such measures, Ukrainians also extensively target Russian transport vehicles moving to the front, meaning that if these trucks are hit, the Russian soldiers have a near zero chance of escaping the burning wreck alive. Overall, the mismanagement and poor treatment of their soldiers, combined with poorly executed assaults, are causing massive casualties among Russian forces. And further continuation of such costly assaults will lead to deterioration of combat readiness of remaining Russian forces. While the rapidly deteriorating morale is seeing Russian commanders implement increasingly distressing measures to prevent mass desertions among Russian soldiers. At the same time, Russia's military commanders are planning operations that could take up to 9 months to bear fruit, showing that Vladimir Putin has no intention of ending the war he started anytime soon, according to the Institute for the Study of War, ISW. The Washington, D.C. think tank's assessment said that a Russian plan to envelop the Kharkiv city of Kupiansk was one example of long-term strategic thinking, and signaled that commanders believed the war would drag on. The assessment Moscow is planning a slow and steady series of advances suggests that Putin is in no hurry to end the war, regardless of the urgency expressed by the new Trump administration for a hasty resolution to the conflict. The ISW said the seizure of the Donetsk city of Avdiivka in February 2024 will probably be a blueprint for Russia's future envelopments in other frontline areas, which will be conducted slowly. Moscow's effort to envelop Vuhledar, from where Ukrainian troops withdrew in October 2024, has allowed Russia to advance further west, the ISW said. Russia then stopped Ukrainian withdrawal routes and were able to envelop and capture Velika Novosilka in January. This shows Russia's methods involve slow envelopments of frontline towns and settlements. Military analyst Emil Kostahelmi told Newsweek that it would be difficult for Russian forces to move quickly on from Velika Novosilka due to limiting terrain like rivers and open fields, and there was little that was achievable in this direction. He also said the battle for Toretsk, 90 miles northeast, has been very slow, with Russia making some recent progress, reaching the borders of the town, but Ukrainian forces still have a foothold in the southwestern Zabalka district. The ISW said Friday that despite Russian success around Vuhledar and Velika Novosilka, larger envelopments around the hub of Pokrovsk and the Kharkiv city of Kupiansk will test Russian capabilities.